Madam President, are we in a quorum call?
No, we are not.
Okay. Madam President, we are here today to vote on a nominee, Trey Traynor, to be a commissioner at the Federal Election Commission, the independent agency responsible for enforcing federal campaign finance laws. I am deeply disappointed in today's vote, which is a departure from the Senate's long-standing tradition of considering FEC nominees on a bipartisan basis, and another step in eroding the traditions of the Senate, all for a candidate that holds extreme views towards the agency that he would be appointed to. Prior to today, the Senate has voted to confirm 47 FEC nominees, and 42 of those nominees have been confirmed through a bipartisan process. As the ranking Democrat on the Rules Committee, I have repeatedly urged my Republican colleagues to work with us to get the FEC running again, as it is unacceptable that the agency charged with protecting the integrity of our campaign finance system has been without a quorum for 261 days, the longest period without a quorum in the agency's history. But this is not the way to do it. The FEC has been plagued by partisan gridlock for years. With the general election only 168 days away, we should be working together to make sure that the agency is working to the fullest extent possible. Americans are tired of hyper-partisanship and gridlock. This is not the time to abandon the bipartisan tradition of moving FEC nominees together. We need to work to restore their trust in our political institutions, and with this vote, we are taking a step backwards. We all know that our campaign finance system is broken. Everyone in this room knows it. Spending on campaigns has gotten out of control, and special interest groups are a major part of the problem. Experts project that at least $6 billion will be spent in the 2020 election cycle on political advertisements alone. That doesn't count the billions that will be spent by the campaigns themselves and the additional billions spent by dark money groups and special interests who are trying to influence this election. In order for our democracy to work, we need strong rules for campaign spending, and we need a strong agency to enforce those rules. We should be working together on a bipartisan basis to propose solutions to try to get the FEC back on track. I have a few ideas. We should work together to pass legislation to reform the FEC's rules so that it functions better. We should establish a working group that will investigate bipartisan solutions to improve the function of the FEC. And we should also work together to select strong nominees from both parties who will serve on the commission with the understanding that they are there to enforce the law and protect our election system. And oh, does this election system need protecting right now? We are in the midst of a pandemic. We have people standing in garbage bags and homemade masks in the rain in Wisconsin just trying to exercise their right to vote. We have nearly 50 of those people who got sick. We have a poll worker who got sick. We have states all over the country with both Democratic and Republican governors who are desperately trying to get funding so that we can have more at-home voting and have the polls open earlier and have it open for days so that people don't have to all congregate on one day, and then on that day we have to also make our elections safer. We have a lot to do. But we know that the enforcement agency, when it comes to elections, for things like campaign finance, that is the FEC, and we know it is broken, and we, as a body, should work to improve it. My Republican colleagues, this particular nominee, have repeatedly said that by confirming Mr. Traynor, they are doing some good, restoring a quorum. Okay, but that is not the full story of this nomination. It ignores the fact that gridlock will persist and that Republicans have intentionally left a Democratic seat on the commission vacant for more than 1,100 days. It ignores the fact that Leader Schumer and I referred a Democratic candidate to the White House for consideration and that she has been vetted and cleared. She is immensely qualified, and she would be the first person of color to ever sit on the FEC. Yes, that's right. Not the first person of color now in this Congress, but the first person of color in the history of the Federal Elections Commission to serve on the Federal Elections Commission. Since Republicans refused to move forward in a bipartisan manner, the agency charged with enforcing our campaign finance laws will continue to remain ineffective. This undermines our country's political institutions, and it does not serve our country's best interest. Many people refer to the Senate as the world's greatest deliberative body because the Senate as an institution is designed for the careful consideration and debate of legislation and nominations. When we erode the bipartisan norms that made us the greatest deliberative body, we end up allowing unqualified nominees who hold extreme views to be appointed to important positions in our government, just at a time when we should be doing the opposite. In addition to these process concerns, today we are also being asked to move forward with a nominee to the FEC who doesn't believe in basic campaign finance law. The FEC was created to enforce campaign finance law, so it is critical that the agency be staffed by commissioners who believe in its mission, so it can police people from both parties. Mr. Traynor has consistently worked to dismantle the rules that keep corruption out of our political system. He has spent his career arguing that people shouldn't have to disclose political spending and has worked to stack the decks against voters by gerrymandering districts in Texas to dilute minority voting power. Traynor's views on disclosure are inconsistent with decades of Supreme Court precedent, including the views of late Justice Scalia. When fellow Republicans in the Texas legislature worked to require politically active nonprofit organizations to disclose their donors, Traynor challenged them and said that such a law, quote, would have a chilling effect on anybody's ability to speak, end quote. Now, let's just step back. That is fellow Republicans on the Texas legislature simply trying, members of that body, trying to put some reforms in place so you know where those donations are coming from. And he spoke out against that. Moving forward with this nomination today may restore a quorum, but it does not serve the American people. The American people deserve an FEC that works, an agency that enforces the law and protects our political system from corruption. At a time when unprecedented amounts of dark money and foreign money are flowing into our elections, are influencing our courts, a fully functioning FEC is critical to safeguarding our political system. But when it comes to a nominee for the agency in charge of enforcing our campaign finance laws, the absolute minimum qualification should be that the person actually believes in the mission of the agency. Is that too much to ask? We need to focus on how we can help the American people safely vote during this pandemic. I mean, we need to focus on this pandemic instead of the series of votes that we've seen this week. But if we are going to decide who should serve on the FEC during this pandemic, it should be someone who believes in the mission of the FEC. We need to work together to hold hearings with bipartisan groups of election officials, like we have been working to do on the state level when it comes to how to vote on this pandemic. There has been a lot of good work going on with Republicans and Democrats, governors and secretaries of state. We need to do the same thing in this chamber as we approach major legislation and as we approach our workings with the FEC. I oppose the process by which this nominee has come to the floor, and I believe the nominee's extreme views are disqualifying for this important office. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote no on this nominee. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 43. The motion is agreed to. Clerk will report the nomination.
Federal Election Commission, James E. Traynor III of Texas to be a member of the Federal Election Commission.